Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Heritage Week. If you've driven down historical Barclay Street, you may realise that Ararat Rural City Council has much to celebrate heritage-wise this week. However, today, I'd like to take you on a walking tour involving dark heritage through Ararat Lunatic Asylum, or Aradale as I'll refer to it throughout the tour. In terms of heritage, this complex is considered one of Victoria's worst places of pain and shame. Firstly, though, a quick overview of this monumental facade before us and the site's heritage significance. The facade is a model of Italianate design that dates from the 1860s through to the early 1900s. The complex was built on Madman's Hill in 1863 and contains two monumental towers which were used for ventilation and covered walkways not included at Ararat's sister asylums, Kew and Beechworth. Aradale's intrinsic value is that it is a monument to mental health, and nearly the entire complex is registered with the National Trust of Victoria as a site of architectural, cultural and medical significance. Aradale is a goldfield asylum and echoes the riches and progress of colonial Victoria. It also potently reflects the good moral social values of the day. In June 1874, a journalist from the Geelong Advertiser visited Aradale and reported that the asylum was the Lion of Ararat. He claimed that nothing had been spared and the poor fellows lived comfortably, and that all Victorians may justly feel proud that such thoughtful provision had been made for those unable to look after themselves. Community members were interested in viewing the idiots, and this was granted if they called at a decent hour and acted with propriety. However, this arrangement was deemed inappropriate. Victorian asylums closed its doors. Effectively, this distanced the disabled from the view of the colony and made mental illness a thing to be feared. Social values reflected that of out of sight, out of mind, and this stigma remained with the asylum its entire working life. So here we are, full circle, 150 years later, visiting at a decent hour and acting with propriety. Welcome to the administration building. Stark and bleak now, this area was once bright and cheery with potted plants, comfortable chairs and magazines. Patients either brought here by relatives of police would meet the clerk who would check the admissions list. A ward nurse would then take the patient to their dormitory. Relatives were advised not to return for 2 weeks in order for the patient to settle in. One can only guess what patients thought when they arrived, and many found it traumatic. The surrounding landscape, with its once functional water fountain and welcoming nursing staff, were designed to ease anxieties. Some patients would receive mainly weekend visitors, but for many patients without support, the asylum was the end of the road, where they were completely forgotten by both government and community. We now find ourselves situated in the male airing court, wards fully surrounding us. Aradale was purposefully divided into male and female areas. It was also divided into a psychiatric illness hospital and the Aradale Training Centre, which assisted intellectually disabled patients with training and socialisation in order to cope with everyday life. The wards are classified depending on the patient's gender, condition and socialisation abilities. If we look on the male side, Ward 1 was for those who were fairly independent and needed minimal care. These patients were able to visit Ararat to buy clothes and personal items. Ward 3 locked away patients for long periods because they were considered a danger to others. And finally, Ward 5 detained older patients or ones with mobility issues, hence it being on the ground floor. To the far side, we see the forensic unit. Opened in 1991, it housed patients from J Ward, the ward for the criminally insane. Ward 11 housed female chronic long-term psychiatric patients. Ward 12, the males. The unit showcases the ideas of asylum practitioners Dr. Charles Brothers and Dr. Cunningham Dax, who believed that occupational and creative therapies proved productive. Wards, be it male or female, contain their own kitchen and lounge rooms, and the dormitories contain nothing more than a bed, reading materials, and posters on the walls. This hallway we stand in now belongs to the medical centre. Built 40 years before Freudian science, behind these doors the rooms have witnessed decades of medical challenges and successes. In the early years, diseases such as septicemia, whooping cough, polio, Spanish flu and diphtheria raged through the asylum. Many institute-related ailments such as malnutrition and dehydration were treated here. In more modern times, these rooms witnessed some of Victoria's most cruel and horrific medical procedures such as lobotomies, insulin coma, and electroconvulsive therapies. Patients either died here or in their wards. However, it was not always doom and gloom here. This beautiful room is the recreation hall. In the early days, the hall showed films, held Christmas parties, and dances. In later years, though, the hall became a communal dining area. At times, the main kitchen provided 3 cooked meals for 1,000 patients a day, which were sent to the wards and eaten there. However, this changed, and those that were able to dine here found the interaction with other patients therapeutic. The recreation dining hall is a bright reminder of better times at Aradale. On Sundays, it was compulsory for those who were physically able to attend Sunday service to do so. So in keeping within institutional rules, I now bring you to the chapel. Gordon Moyes, Aradale's last chaplain, recollects the asylum as having guarded gates, barbed wire fences, and neglected patients crammed into squalid dormitories. He emotionally remembers his first service in this chapel, recalling old and young, male and female, some blank-eyed and hopeless, others bright-eyed, endlessly chuckling over some secret joke of their own. They filed in, some drivelling, others swaying or rocking from side to side, a few with no light of sanity in their eyes. He later learned, though, that not all patients were like this. Some were highly intelligent and remarkably sane. Mrs. Moyes and the Ararat Women's Fellowship would visit the patients to hold quizzes and piano sing-alongs, as well as play card and board games. The patients were rewarded with small gifts and sweets. Reverend Moyes and his family showed a deep commitment in bettering patients' lives in this environment. We conclude our tour today, rather poetically, in the morgue. What we've witnessed is that Aradale stands as an icon in terms of heritage richness, but faces a crossroads in its heritage future. Will its isolated location save it from facing the same demise as Kew and Beechworth asylums? On one hand, Aradale reflects government indifference and neglect, sorrow and squalor, while on the other there are glimpses of compassion, bravery, endurance, and resourceful innovation within horrific conditions. I found researching this walk today insanity in itself. While Aradale's heritage may not be forgotten, it is scattered and surreal. Information is everywhere, throughout the internet, on YouTubes and obscure databases, in dusty old text and faded photographs, in private and public collections scattered statewide, staff and patient voices on podcasts embedded on online news articles, texts published by curators, exhibition managers, and friends of J Ward. Aradale's heritage is as disorientated and disorganised as the patients who once lived and died here. So, as a final thought for today, imagine with me how you would like to see Aradale in the 21st century. For me, it is to become the Victorian Psychiatric History and Heritage Museum, a merging of history and heritage, a museum that embraces the progress of psychiatric development and care, and celebrates those who were involved in that process. Aradale is a centralised repository whereby thousands of objects, texts and images from Victorian asylums can be displayed, historicised and digitalised. The theatre hall becoming a conference venue where psychiatric knowledge can be shared, thus widening the scope for education, bringing the past into the present. Wards and female nurse quarters become accommodation for culture vultures, ghost hunters, historians, writers and tourists alike. The gardens becoming memorials and the walls covered with tributes. An oral history project giving the voices back to this site. The chapel being an interpretation centre whereby all involved can come and remember and reflect. A holistic space assisting the healing process, thus ending negative social values and stigmas. Admittedly, it is an enormous project, including a myriad of stakeholders. However, Aradale must develop a framework that considers everyone's voices and actions. Those who are ready to keep Aradale alive have a unique framework, one that is capable of creating a masterpiece showcasing the challenges and achievements of mental health. Aradale must stare down past struggles with places of pain and shame and become the lion of Ararat again. Thank you for attending the tour. Please feel free to wander through with propriety for the next half an hour. Please also be aware that the guards will be locking the gates at 12 p.m. sharp. And on a Sunday, I can't guarantee being able to gain the 6 signatures needed to have you released. Have a good week, and may sanity prevail.